Hello again. So, in the last video, we started one of the most important aspects of JavaScript, functions. So now we're going to spend a good amount of time learning them. So in this video, we are going to declare our first function. So remember in the previous video, I talked about function declarations and expressions. First of all, we're going to see the function declaration. Okay, so here we want to be able to define a function without arguments, define a function with arguments, and define a function that returns a value. All right, so what exactly are functions? Well, functions are like a variable for lines of code. So for instance, in a normal variable called name, we store a string like Sarah or a number or a Boolean. So I say var name and Sarah. Okay, so yeah, that's how we defined a variable earlier. But in a function, we can store 20 lines of code, and then we can recall that function, and those 20 lines of code can be run again. So we can say that we use functions to be able to write reusable codes. Now, of course, it's definitely more complicated than that explanation, but I want to just break it down as simply as possible to introduce you to the fact that functions are just reusable bits of code. All right. Now, I know I could have said that earlier, but now I broke it down for you. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about, the next thing that we need to know about functions is that we must declare them first. So we define a block of code and we give it a name. That makes the function. And then we've got to be able to run it later, right? So it's a two-step process. Declare a function and then call it so you can see the result. Okay, so let's write our first function declaration. I'll say function, and this is a keyword, then name of our function. So say hello, and then parenthesis and curly braces. So yeah, this is actually the syntax to declare a function. So function, you can think of as a keyword, just like var or if or while. So function anything that we want here, this is our function name. So this one is called say hello, parenthesis, and then curly braces. And then we put as many lines of code as we want to inside the curly braces. Then we can call the function later by referencing its name with parentheses at the end. So to see that first, inside the curly braces, I am going to say console.log and hello world. So when I declare a function like this, JavaScript was going to see this code, but it's not actually going to run the console.log. I'm just registering a function called say hello, but it doesn't actually execute the code. You follow? Yeah, because remember, I said this is a two-step process. So first we declare a function just like we did here. Then we need to call it. So now if I want to call that function, I refer to its name, say hello, and I add parentheses. So it runs whatever's inside of say hello. Okay, so now to see our result, I'll save all this, go to the console. And here I refresh the page, and sure enough, here we see hello world. So go back to our code, and yes, this parenthesis is really important right here as you see it. So to execute a function, we need to call that, okay? So I want to show you another example to see how functions help us to write dry code. You remember what dry means, right? Don't repeat yourself. So first, I'm going to comment out this function. Okay, now, let's say we want to print out multiple lines to the console. So I say console.log hello world. Down here, console.log goodbye world. And console.log how are you? Okay, so now let's think that I want to print out these 3 lines constantly to my console. So, of course, without a function, we need to rewrite all that code again and again, right? Every time that I want to console log these 3 lines, I've got to run those 3 lines of code individually, which is not obviously very dry. Yeah, it's a lot of repeated code. We don't like doing that. So, using a function, I can just write those console logs one time in a function. Then I call that function whenever I need that function. So how to do that? Here I'm going to declare a function. I say function, do something, and then inside the function, I'll just cut these lines and paste them here. Now all I have to do is write do something with parentheses. Now down here, I call this function 4 times. I say do something with parentheses 4 times. So what we've done here is instead of writing these 3 lines of code again and again, I've created a function to call these lines. Now I can save this and go to my console. And yeah, what do you think? Here we see the result. We called that 3 lines console log 4 times. And we made that in a very dry way. Okay, obviously it's a very simple example, but you definitely see how you can use functions. So let's take a quick break right here and we'll continue in the next section.